Can I have your attention, please? Meeting is going to start pretty much on time. Rent has been increased from $425 to $565. Wait, that's not the best part. From $425 to $565 in the last 2.5 years. It's an out-of-state corporation. They were purchased almost exactly the same time as Sun, and we have people here who are going to tell you about it. I also have a letter from their management that's going to be distributed now. Just read it and pass it on to the next person. There's also an article from Sun Communities about Sun Communities who purchased a mobile home park outside of Houston, Texas, back in July. They paid $30 million for it. And the article that's being passed around says that the quotes the former owner saying, they made us an offer we couldn't refuse. Why do you think you read that? Right? The last document is a letter that Senator Blumenthal.
There's only like 5 in the whole room.
Just pass them around, please. Read the highlighted portions and pass it on to the next person. The last was a letter going around. It's a copy of a letter that the senator sent to the director of the, I forget the acronym, but it's the Federal Fair Housing Administration. They supervise Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. The senator appeared at the Sun community in Killingworth about a month and a half ago, and less than a week later, he had this letter going out asking them to identify parks around the country that have bought parks with low interest federal loans, and then jack the rents up to the residents. Okay, so that's the letter that it's signed by 16 or 17 congressmen and senators, and he did that within a week. Okay, so we're going to wait a couple minutes to get started until he gets here, but please just pass those documents around so people can see them, because the ones about, especially about the parks in Beacon Falls, that could happen to us. Okay?
That was not its way.
Okay, folks, if you can have your attention, please. We have the senator is here, and John Larson is on his way. We also have members of our town council, Valerie Paulo, Paul Chaplinsky. You may hear a few words from them later on. The senator is here to talk about our issues with the escalating rents from our out-of-state corporation that we have no control over. He's not going to be able to talk about fair rent commission. We'll talk about that with the councilman. When the question and answer comes, talk to him about how the rent increases affect you, if there's any service cutbacks that affect you, and with that, Senator Blumenthal, away you go. Take care.
I don't know whether everyone can hear me. Can I use the microphone? Please, the microphone. Okay, I always follow instructions. Thank you all for being here today. It really, I think, is a very powerful message and testament to the importance of this issue that you are here today. I have been elsewhere in the state talking with other communities that confront the same kinds of challenges that you do, for example, in Killingworth with Sun communities, and I am really deeply disturbed, I think to state it, understated, by what I have seen and heard, the abuses that have been brought to my attention. I have written to the Federal Housing Finance Authority. I helped to lead a letter involving 16 of my congressional colleagues. And just yesterday, I received a response to that letter, which I consider to be extremely disappointing. So, just to let you know, as you know about me, I tend to be a fighter, and we're not going to take no for an answer from this federal agency. I'm going to pursue additional remedies. And I sort of jumped to the headline before going to the substance here. What I've heard about rent increases, about evictions, about the conditions of your property where you live, essentially the failures of Sun to comply with basic standards of fairness and decency. But I'm really here to listen more than to talk, because what I'm doing here, think of it as kind of a public hearing, is getting evidence. So that when I go to Washington and I talk to my colleagues and they say, well, you know, what's your evidence? What's the problem? I can point to them, and we are recording and taking notes and making sure that we have that evidence in your statement, and say to them, there's really a problem here. We thought maybe the Federal Housing Finance Authority, Fannie Mae, would take some action. So far they haven't. They've said, well, we know there may be a problem. We're examining it. That's what's disappointing to me. I don't feel they need to examine it. If they've listened to people, as I've listened to people, they ought to be taking action. But essentially, I want to listen to you and hear your suggestions for remedies. And some of the remedies I've suggested, like giving tenants more rights, giving them standing in court, giving them a right of first refusal, some of them may not apply to you, insofar as Sun Community's already bought the property. Right of first refusal may not help you, but maybe there are other ways to help. And so in addition to the evidence about what you consider the wrongs, how your rights have been abused, I also want to hear from you about what you think the remedies should be, because you know firsthand, you know better than I. And I want to thank the local officials who are here, invite them to comment and be part of this conversation. It's not going to be like a formal hearing, you know, recognizing people for 5 minutes or whatever. I really want to hear from you, and I want to listen to you about what you've been going through, what your lives are like, what you think is going wrong here that Sun Community has failed to do, or what you think is right. You know, I'm not telling you, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I am perfectly happy to hear about good things too. That said, let me begin by inviting any questions or comments from any of the audience member or local officials. And what we can do is perhaps invite folks to come forward and use the microphone. Would that be okay?
I think so.
If you have another
If
microphone.
I may, Senator, just want you to know that we have problems here at Sun, and we're going to have people that are going to.
We can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, we have people here, lots of people from Sun. We have issues at Sun, and you'll be hearing some of that from our residents. So we also have residents of two other parks here who have much more serious issues, and they're both out-of-state corporations that have, one that was bought at almost exactly the same time. Their rent has gone up substantially more than ours, and we know this and there's another park on in Clinton, gentleman sitting right here in front of you, who's gonna talk about that, where their rents are up to $730 a month, and they have no services compared to us folks. And there's nothing that's gonna prevent them unless we start making a fight about a 3.5% increase like they passed in New York last year on mobile home rents, and a first right of refusal, so we have the opportunity in the future, people have the opportunity to buy their parks. So I notice people have questions. You wanna raise your hand? Margo, come on up.
Let me just say, and I think that's a really good point. It doesn't have to be limited to Sun. Any of these problems anywhere having to do with tenants, manufactured, homes and so forth, whether it's Sun or someone else. Good point.
They're here.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Blumenthal for coming today. My question for you is, I appreciate that you're here listening, wondering what it is you're able to commit to on a federal level to make these changes that you're going to hear about. And then second part of that is, what do you need us to do to help you make those changes?
Great question. What can I commit to? I am one of 100 in the Senate. Everybody here has followed the ups and downs of getting stuff done in the Senate. We've just passed some major measures there having to do with burn pit victims. I worked for 5 to 7 years to get relief for people who were exposed to toxic chemicals in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere, Agent Orange in Vietnam. I worked on the Inflation Reduction Act. That took 18 months to get a compromise to lower prescription drugs. And I worked on various other pieces of legislation. I'm not going to go into them, but the reason I mention it is it took time to do it. It didn't happen overnight. So part of my commitment is, as I said before, I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm not giving up. I'm not going away. I'm not backing down. Federal agency has come back to us and said, administratively, that is by executive action, they're not willing to take some of the measures that I think are necessary. Protection against, essentially, a Bill of Rights. Protection against rent increases, eviction, protection against failure to maintain property, right of first refusal. We can go down a list, and part of what I hear is what you would like. But what I can commit to do is work for legislation. In other words, a new law. Not just relying on the FHFA, Federal Housing Finance Administration, but a new law. I can't commit to a timetable. We're going to get it done by X day. We're approaching the end of this session, so it definitely won't be this session. But I can commit that I will introduce legislation, which I think now is necessary, and not just I, but as I mentioned, 16 of my congressional colleagues joined me in that letter. So we have a nucleus of support. And I can also commit that I will go to every one of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, nonpartisan, and enlist and ask for their support. And I hope we'll have people in both parties joining this legislation. That's what I can commit to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Raise your hands.
Oh, the second part of the question, what do you need from us to
Oh,
help?
thank you. I need from you what you're doing now. I need you to be articulate, to be vocal. I'm going to say something you don't ordinarily hear from politicians. I need you to be critical of me. In other words, don't let me off the hook. I don't think you will. But I say that just to encourage you to write, to phone. I'm not asking you to be, critical in the sense of why haven't you gotten it done? You understand what the obstacles are, but just don't go away. Don't be shy, because I'm not going away. I'm going to continue to fight this battle. And I need from you the kind of vocal face and voice that you're providing right here today. That's why I want to do this event, because I want to hear from you, and I want to continue to hear from you. And there's one other thing I can commit to do, and that is I'm going to come back. Not in 5 years from now. I'm going to come back this year or next, early next year, later this year or early next year, and report to you on where we are. Because, as I mentioned, new legislation won't happen in the next, we have 3 months essentially to the end of the session. So this is going to be into next year, and I commit to come back to you in this building, if they'll let me back, if you'll let me back, and report to you on what we're doing. Because I sincerely think that there is an issue of really fundamental justice here, fairness and justice. And I think the more we push through legislation or through the kind of voice and face that you're giving to these issues, the more we're going to be heard and get action. Sorry to be so long-winded. You're up.
Perhaps it would be helpful to identify what right of first, what is it called, first refusal is. That would probably help. I bet there's some people who don't know what that is. Also, you spoke of legislation. Is it written?
We have a draft.
You have a draft? Okay, because that takes a long time, I'm sure. Also, how do we get on the board, or how do we get our representation to Sun or to whatever community? They're doing all of this without any of our knowledge or our say-so, and how do we become part of that process of on their board of directors or whatever? It's representation is what I'm talking about. How do we get some type of person to say our needs to Sun or whatever corporate company it is?
Okay. Thanks for the question. It's a very important topic. I have, should have started it already. I have a little book here. If you're interested in finding out about what's going on in your community, I'm the president of the Connecticut Manufacturer Homeowners Alliance. If you want to get in touch with your representatives in your community, you can contact your communications committee. There's one in every community. I encourage you to talk to them. If you want to talk to people with the Alliance who can help tell you what your rights are and how to enforce them, there are statutes currently on the books that are not always enforced the way we'd like them to be, but we can help you know at least what they are and how to begin enforcing them. So I'm a little bit late passing this around, but
members.
Yeah, just pass that on. If you're interested in being able to contact the Connecticut Manufacturing Homeowners Alliance, just put your email down and maybe write what park you're in. Otherwise, you have to be aggressive in contacting your communications committee, and sometimes your town representatives. If it's a health department, a zoning issue, take advantage of talking to your town representatives, and use the avenues that are available to you now. Senator, I just want to make sure we don't forget to talk to the people from other communities. But raise your hand.
Let me also, there's another part of that question. It's a very good question. Right of first refusal, what is that? If the owner of your property offers it for sale, like what happened when Sun Communities bought it, and let me tell you, it's happening all across the country. The reason why we have 16 members of Congress joining this letter is it's happening in every state where there are manufactured housing communities. That's what you live in, a manufactured housing community. That's what it's called. And in every state, hedge funds, private investors, venture capitalists are saying to themselves, wow, this is an underutilized asset. That's a highfalutin term for we can get more money, right? We can make more profit if we run this thing by raising rents and cutting costs, and we know how to do it because we've already made a lot of money. I know I'm oversimplifying. I'm not criticizing the capitalist system. I believe in American capitalism, but sometimes it goes off the rails if people need some protection. And as you know about what I've done over my career, I've fought to protect people from the excesses, from the abuses, from the wrongdoers and the lawbreakers. I'm not saying they're breaking the law. I'm saying we need stronger laws to protect people in this instance. And let me just say one other thing. The Federal Housing Finance Authority. The word finance is the important word there. Freddie Mac, you know what they do? They support these purchases. Sometimes they buy the loans. You know, these hedge funds don't just put in their own money. Often they borrow money. And the federal government, in effect, I'm oversimplifying, but the federal government supports their purchases, sometimes buying the mortgages so they can buy it at lower interest rates, sometimes guaranteeing them, which means lower interest rates on the loan. But one way or the other, they buy these loans or support them, which enables the hedge funds to do what they do. And all I'm saying is, as a condition of that support, they ought to require basic standards of decency, fair play, fair treatment. It's not like the federal government is coming out of the blue and saying to these financial types, oh, you have an obligation, we're going to impose. The federal taxpayers help them. You help them. You're all taxpayers. And so I'm saying there's a kind of mutual obligation. And this goes back to the question that was just raised. How do we get representation? You know, they're private companies. Their shareholders or their owners are the ones who profit. And they don't have to let you be on the boards. It's like any other corporation. And that's why we need some protection here for people. Now, I know I'm giving you more than maybe you want to hear, but it, I think, is important to understand what we are up against and what they are doing here and what legally gives them the right to do what they do and what legally should enable the federal government to be tougher on it.
Lori?
Thank you for coming, Senator Blumenthal. Appreciate it. I'm going to give you some general information before I ask my question. The current owners are imposing large rent increases on existing senior homeowners and simultaneously reducing the services they were promised when they bought into their community. These are things like repaving of roads, repair of septic systems, drainage issues, tree trimming and removal, maintenance services. Though these are referred to as 55-plus communities, they consist mostly of an elderly population seeking affordable retirement as they live out their lives on fixed incomes. Now, many are finding they can no longer handle the increases when their incomes are being absorbed by medical insurance, prescription drug costs, gas, grocery, utility bills that are skyrocketing. One of these costs is Medicare. Whenever we get an increase in Social Security, almost half is taken to increase Medicare. When passing out the flyers for this meeting, I met a lovely woman who has lived in her community for 48 years. She said to me, "This is a great idea, but unfortunately, it's too late for me, as my rent has gotten too high, so I had to sell my home and move in with my son." 48 years she's been here. An example of an issue that they refused to address. The previous owners had repaired roads in 3 of the 4 communities and said our roads would be done as soon as weather permitted. Before that happened, the new owners took over, and we were told our roads didn't need repair, repaving, or even repairs. There is a gentleman in my neighborhood who walks every day for therapy with a walker, and I use a cane when walking my dog. This is a picture of just one of the ruts in the road. They go all the way across. You can't go around it. It's all the way across. It's 1 inch deep, 4 inches wide. And as you can see, the walker wheels are stuck in it and my cane. When those wheels get stuck, that walker's going to go down and that gentleman's going to go with it. I know because that's my cane and I've fallen before. Having said all that, my question to you, Senator, is would it be possible for you to speak with our Attorney General and the Commissioner of the State Department on Aging and Disabilities to better enforce existing laws and regulations protecting residents and their concerns?
The answer is yes. I will definitely do that, for sure. Thank you for describing so well and providing the pictures as well. And if you don't mind, if you have an extra copy of one of the pictures, I'd like to take that with you. Thank you. So everyone can see. You know, we've all had relatives. I've had members of my own family who have fallen, and it can be devastating, as you all know. So this kind of danger, it looks, I mean, I'm sure there's some people who would say, oh, you know, get over it. It's just a little crack in the road, but this is a potential danger. Thank you.
Anybody else from Sun want to have any questions about health or safety?
Just curious if we have the right to see the budget. We have no right to see the budget.
It's a private corporation.
I couldn't hear the question.
I was wondering if we had a right to see the budget for our unit, but I was just told, like how our money's spent.
It is a, you have the budget,
I went to the town hall. Taxes and.
or maybe you could provide that too.
You want that too? Okay.
As much information as you have.
I know how much money they make every month, and the problem is that money leaves the state because they're in Michigan. It doesn't stay here.
She made the point that the money that Sun collects goes out of the state, doesn't stay here. And on that note, I want to introduce a really strong advocate for our state. I didn't see him come in, or I would have called him on him earlier. My great friend and a tremendous member of Congress, one of the leaders in Congress, John Larson.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon.
Well, listen, having talked with David and understanding the dilemma that not only you, but so many similar situations all across this country are facing with these unseemly corporations coming in and gobbling up what were mom and pop operations, and then both raising the rent and obviously not taking care of the maintenance or the facilities here. So I applaud Senator Blumenthal, as I think all of you know, a tireless worker on behalf of consumers when he was Attorney General, and he's carried that same work ethic and concern to the United States Senate, where he is a leader as well, and I fully support and stand with him to do whatever we can, or whatever it takes. There are, in my hometown of East Hartford, several parks not unlike yours as well, that face similar situations. This is a national issue, but as you were articulating and pointing out so well, something that we're looking to get our arms around from a federal perspective, and whether there's a nexus to Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae or whatever we can do, including talking to Attorney General Tong and also Governor Lamont and state elected officials to see how we can all band together, because that's the way the system should work. So you have our support, and I know you mentioned you wanted me to mention something about Social Security as well, but I'll do that once there's when the main purpose for our being here is true. But I couldn't help but listening to what you said about Medicare, et cetera, and noting that Social Security has not been enhanced in more than 51 years by Congress. But I'll talk about that.
Yeah, I should mention John Larson has been, and this is no exaggeration, this is an understatement, the leading member of the United States Congress to reform Social Security, not only to increase the benefits so they keep pace with the cost of living, but also to make sure that it is solvent into the future. You hear all these scary warnings about Social Security being insolvent. Well, John Larson has fought to make sure that it is secure, and so that the burden of making it secure is not borne by you. That it is borne by the people who right now are paying little, if anything, in terms of their share of income to continue to support it. And I've been very proud. He's leading it on the House side. I've introduced the same bill on the Senate side, and I'm hoping that we can do as well as John Larson has done on the House side to get it through the United States Congress. But as he said, this is a separate topic, but I didn't want to let the moment pass without giving him a lot of credit. He has devoted his life in Congress to this cause over many, many years. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the burn pit legislation, 5-7 years. Well, he's been at this for a decade, more than a decade. So he has been tireless on this topic, and I want to personally thank him for his leadership. But we can talk more about that, you know, a little bit later or in a separate session. But let's take some more questions or comments.
I just want to make sure the people from who have a much greater burden than we do down in Beacon Falls and Clinton, I'd like to recognize them just briefly. Colleen, would you mind telling us your experience? This is an out-of-state corporation in Butler Park in 2019.
I was thinking we should come down to Beacon Falls and have the same kind of session.
Thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it. My name is Colleen Dana. I'm from Beacon Falls. We live a few of us are here, neighbors of mine, at River's Edge Mobile Home Community. Some of us have lived there for 44 plus years. I've been there mainly since '97, you know. And there's, I would say, at least 75% of the park is on Social Security in one form or another, and I am as well. In 2020, the new owners informed us that they had become the new owners, and we had a new name of the park, and our rent was going to increase right away at $30. Following year, it was $45, and this year it was $50. So I expect next year to be $60. You know, in another couple of years, we're going to be exactly where the people are up at $730 now. And I know people are they're frightened to death because they don't know where they're going to live. Some can go live with family, others don't have that option. There's not been any improvements at the park. They did minor stuff, really. They didn't do anything. Our utilities are the same as they've been since 50 years ago. You know, there's been no update on the water, septic, or electric. I know we have quite a few other issues. People are gonna be putting in reports to the DCP, complaints regarding a couple septic issues and a few others. We were thinking of putting together one report, as kind of a whole of a bunch of things that are wrong at the park that everybody's got a problem with. And we really need something done as far as, is there a way to stop them, the percentage of the increase that they're gonna continue to do yearly? Because yeah, we're gonna be at 730, in a matter of just 3 years, I'd say, the rate we're going. So, if there's anything I forgot. Right, we had a meeting as soon as they took over ownership, and the rent had gone up this year, $50, we had the meeting, and people being on Social Security, you know, their response to it in a letter was that the government, unfortunately, has not kept up with the increases. It's unfortunate, that was their response, it's unfortunate. Very unfortunate that you're gonna have to move. So, you know, it's so important that, what you're doing. It really is, because I've seen and I've shared with many people, the Googles I've seen all over the country, you know, news segments about what's happening. And, you know, there's people, like I said, have been in the park for 40 plus years. You know, and we just, at least if they're gonna increase the price, show something for it, you know what I mean? And increase our utility, update the utilities. So that's the kind of thing we're dealing with right now. So again, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. Well, thanks for the comment, and, you know, I'm more than glad to go down to Beacon Falls and do down there what we're doing here, so that more of the residents there can talk to me about what's going on there, because maybe they couldn't come here today. But thank you so much for being here, and I think that's really important. You know, some companies are raising prices because they have supply chain issues, the costs are going up, restaurants are trying to decide whether to raise their prices because food is more expensive, but they're not doing anything here. It costs them more, right? They're just charging more because they can.
As far as this park at Beacon Falls goes, there's a couple things I want you to know. One, they're purchased by a company by the name of Athena Real Estate Holdings. We have an article about Athena, you can Google it, where they purchased a park with federal financing, right, in Mississippi. I can get that article here. And one of the questions I was gonna ask you later, so I'll have the opportunities, have you had any success identifying parks, especially in Connecticut, where the new owners have increased rents and benefited from low interest federally backed financing? Do we have any evidence of that yet?
Well, we're still looking at that, but I think we do. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, all right. So the other park that's suffering more than anybody else, we have two residents sitting right here. I don't know which one of you want to speak, but this is called Evergreen Springs in Clinton, and there you've heard people referencing $731 a month. I'd like you to hear from them while you're here.
Hi, my name is Bob Bailey, and I'm a resident at Evergreen Springs. The first thing I wanted to cover is that our rent is constantly going up every year. Way back when we first moved in 2005, my rent was $565, if I remember correctly. It's just gone up this year to $721. It's $731 if you have a fuel tank. Whether it be oil or kerosene, you pay an extra $10. I sympathize with everybody simply because it's unrealistic. I'm not afraid of throwing out numbers. The one cost that sticks in my mind is what they pay in taxes on the land that we have our home on. The taxes for Evergreen Springs in Clinton is $94,000 a year. A year. We have 100 homes. $721 a month. A month and a quarter, you've already paid the taxes. So the other money should be being used to take care of the things that need to be done. The large corporations are comparing our homes to homes that are rented away from mobile home parks. If you got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, they're comparing that to a normal renting. Well, hang on a minute. We're renting the land. We're not renting the home. So how can you compare that? How can there be a comparison? That's one of the big issues.
That's their philosophy.
That-
That's
that's-
what they feel they can charge.
They feel they can charge. And not to belabor this, I've already submitted a fair rent complaint. And that's something that I'm going to bring up simply because you're probably all, if you have a fair rent commission in your town, depending on how they structure their fair rent commission, usually they use Title VII to structure their. Each individual has to submit a complaint. If everybody's in agreement on a complaint, I don't know why there can't be one complaint that would cover that park, because we're all residents. I'll give you an example. I went through and I submitted a complaint to RHP, which is our owners out in Michigan somewhere where I don't think they know where we are. But that's beside the point. But I submitted a complaint. We have 100 homes. I had almost 50% of the residents that signed that complaint. I sent that complaint to RHP because I was trying to do one step at a time. Give them a shot to respond to what our concerns were. The response I got back, I don't want to use your words, I wasn't very happy with, because the guy sitting back there in the office, the response was unsatisfactory. We're trying to do this, trying to do that. We have 10 homes, approximately 10 homes that need to come down. They've needed to come down in the last, I might be exaggerating, I'm going to say 6 years or less. They've been sitting there vacant. Some are boarded up. Some of them, if you drove in our park, you'd say, oh, I'm not moving there. The new folks, if I haven't said it, are paying $800 to start with when they move into their homes. And I did talk to a resident and I verified that. We have that's some of the things. I took 58 pictures that I turned in with my fair rent complaint. I'm going to be doing a complaint to DCP in the same avenue if something's not done. But it's awful funny, the complaint we turned in to RHP, now things have started happening. But what we're seeing is Band-Aids. Oh, we're going to do this a little bit, and we're going to do this a little bit. But anyway, that's what I can share with you from our area, and I'm sure you all have very similar flooding issues. I don't know about trees. We have tons of trees, and they keep telling us, well, you know, you live in the woods. You still got a responsibility. You got trees hanging over houses. You could be laying in bed and a tree come down, you're dead. So, anyway,
I replaced
thank-
5 windshields.
thank you.
This, folks, is why it's important that we stay on top of our town fathers to create a fair rent commission. But that's only one tool. It's only one tool, and it's not a panacea to solve all of our problems. We need to talk about getting the 3.5% rent limit a la New York State before the state legislature next year, and the right of first refusal. So I know there's a couple other people, the senator's time is limited, there's a couple other people that wanted to talk. Somebody in the back. Come on.
One, two, three.
Come on.
Thank you for being here. And it's a frustration, especially like for all the seniors. It feels like a constant beat down. I don't mean to be confrontational. So don't let you off the hook. But all of a sudden now I may be help paying for college loans and paying for everybody coming across the border. And it's frustrating because, you know, I'm just trying to make it to the distance. I'm working full time, even though I retired 13 years ago, just to try to keep above the water line. And you got increases like almost every other month. So hopefully you guys can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is not, you know, I know we're not here to debate the whole panoply of issues before the federal government, but whatever you think about those other issues, and, you know, we may have some disagreements on them. It's not either or. We should be able to solve this problem, even when we have disagreements. We should be together on this issue, even if we disagree on other stuff. And by the way, that goes for a lot of other things too. We ought to be able to disagree and still work together where we agree. And that's what John and I have been trying to do on Social Security and a bunch of other issues in DC. But thank you for that comment. I take it to heart. Thank you.
My name is Deanne Scaringe. I'm retired from an agency called Community Partners in Action, and I used to argue with everybody. And I have to say, I never saw so many people come out for a cause. We all talk amongst ourselves. I have a question about Sun. Do they own other entities that are seniors? Because I know they have a wide variety of RV parks, et cetera. And I think probably one of the problems is we know everybody is a business, but the prior owners, Jensen's, had a sensitivity to the needs of seniors. So, for example, if the cost of living they would not even raise the rent. There were years that the rent wasn't raised at all. So it's difficult to work with an entity that is in effect a true absentee landlord. If you try to reach them, and I know this from one of the people that works there, your call gets bumped back to someone here. So there can be no sensitivity to the needs of seniors. Examples are seniors used to have landscaping done once a year. That doesn't seem like anything to an entity that just wants to get rid of one more cost. But for a senior to have to either do it themselves or hire someone, again, eats into what you're paying in rent. And it just makes you feel that they are totally unaware of the plight of seniors. And we need some advocacy, and I thank you, Senator Larson, for being advocates, but we need some help.
I think, you know, others may know more than I do. Sun does own
All over the country.
all over the country.
All over the
Yeah.
country, and they 2 years ago, I don't know how many of you know this, 2 years ago, Sun bought a 99 mobile home parks for $2 billion. When I met with their VP, they are paying attention. They sent a VP up here 2 weeks ago. I told them, raise the rent on the boat slip, leave us alone. So, they're not, that's not what I'm saying. They own RV parks, marinas, but they're, the stuff that I've read says their biggest, most stable revenue source is from mobile homes.
You know, I should have asked this question earlier. Is anyone from Sun here today? And let me ask. I figured that much, but no, I'm asking from the company. Is anyone from the company here today?
Would they tell us?
Okay, I just wanted to ask. Okay, we're nearing the end. I appreciate.
There's one right there. Senator, where's the representative right there?
Why don't you come forward?
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Thank you, Representative Larson, correct? Thank you. My name is Mike Kane. I'm the local community manager. Honestly, I just came to listen, to gather information, as you mentioned in the beginning. I do agree. Well, I agree with someone who said that it's amazing the turnout has been amazing. So honestly, I'm here to listen and to gather as much information as I can. I'm not here to really make any decisions, just to listen to what everyone is saying. Thank you.
Mike.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Point out that you.
Yeah, I should be clear. I worked for Jensen's, the former owner, for 28 and a half years. So, yes, I was part of the executive management team, in fact, with Jensen's. And but thankfully, I still am employed with Sun as the manager for 3 communities here in Southington. And honestly, folks, if you know me, I'm working my tail off. Okay? I'm working my tail off to try. And I should mention that my mother-in-law is a resident in Forest Hill. So I'm also here to listen because she was not able to be here today. So again, I'm here just to listen. We are trying to do as much as we can to listen to what the issues are, and any input I can have to affect change for the benefit of the residents, I'm going to try and do that.
We know that.
Okay? Thank you.
Give a timeline. Give a timeline. Give a timeline.
You know, in fairness, I just want to say, I don't think he has probably the authority to speak for the corporation here. And as the saying goes, we don't want to shoot the messenger. But we would like the messenger to take back to Sun what you've been hearing here today. And I think it's a message that is unmistakable. It's a message from the residents, and it's a message from Congressman Larson and Senator Blumenthal that this is going to be a continuing conversation, and Sun has an obligation to do better and do more. And we are going to pursue remedies for these residents that affect not only these manufactured home communities, to put the technical word on it, these homes, but also all around the state and all around the country. And I thank you for coming forward, Mike. And you have a long history of helping people. Thank you. Sorry.
Hi, just a quick question really. Is rent control ever applicable to people like us as far as being in the mobile homes? In other words, I understand a lot of it's for like apartment buildings. How about for apartment buildings, apartment buildings, but how about for, living in these communities?
Is rent control ever applicable? You know,
By municipality.
New York has rent control. A lot of other parts of New York State don't have it. It is by specific municipality. I can't speak for all of the municipalities. I'm not aware of rent control that applies to homes like yours anywhere in the state of Connecticut, but I could be corrected. Not to his knowledge. And let me just say, the association really is a performs a really strong service here, and we really appreciate your being at all these meetings. Thank you.
Rebecca, she wants to make a comment.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. I am running for the 22nd House Rep seat, and I just wanted to come, and I was gonna stay quiet and just be here to support you guys, but I do feel compelled to speak because this is a really personal issue for me. I'm a home care nurse in Southington. So as well attended as this is, and you guys have done an amazing job organizing, I have so many patients that are in Sun that are homebound. They can't come to a meeting. They cannot afford food and medications and their health care. They cannot take on this increase.
Or the lawn care, or the snowplow.
100%. And I've seen the conditions of Sun and fall risk. I was like, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I just wanted to let you know and introduce myself and tell you that you do have an advocate and an ally, and I'm hoping to get involved and fight, and I don't take no for an answer, and I am pretty effective at advocating. So I am here, and I just support you guys, and I think we need to bring some change to the legislature.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. Any other, let me just ask, local officials, I think some of them, if they would like to comment at all, and then maybe take a few more comments.
Senator Blumenthal, Valerie DiPaolo with the Town Council, Vice Chair Paul Chaplinski is here with the Town Council, Congressman Larson. I want to thank you both for being here. This is an extremely important issue. We've just started to take up the issue of the Fair Rent Commission. So the chair of the council, myself, our town manager, town attorney, we've had 2 meetings. We've looked at information from CCM. There's not a lot of guidance on just how much authority the commission should have or could have. So we're really looking at that. Dave just mentioned that's going to be one avenue for our residents to be able to go to a commission and make these complaints. The question was raised about whether a group can come to the commission. That's a great question because we would have to have every resident coming in front of this commission. So I just want the residents to know we are working on it. So we have begun to move on it. We're really looking at what the commission would look like, what the makeup of the commission would be, and we know that this is truly a very important issue for all of you. I guess the question maybe for one or both of you is, have you, in your experience, have you seen how these commissions have worked? Are they working? They seem to have subpoena power, and they can be their decisions can be appealed to the Superior Court. So it seems that they do have some authority. We're at that stage where we're really trying to put this in place. So, but once again, we thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm Paul Chaplinski. I also sit with Val on the town council. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Congressman and Senator, for also sitting this out and being here. We know you're very busy, so thanks. As Val mentioned, we are working on this. The town attorney is putting together a framework, so it's a little bit of a journey for us. We are not one of the communities that had a fair rent commission before. There are a number in Connecticut, so we are looking at benchmarking. You know, what are they doing? What have they done? I will say, I think that maybe the fair rent commissions, other fair rent commissions in Connecticut haven't been meeting as much, right? They don't get as many complaints. I'm not sure if it was advertised as much. I'm unsure why. But I went through and I looked at a number of communities, and meetings are canceled. They meet once a year, if that. So I think that's, you know, with the new legislation that just passed in July, probably going to pick up a little bit. I too, it's close to my heart. I volunteer for a person in the Jensen's community off of Queen Street, and I talk with her every week, and I hear a lot of the same stories. So my heart is with you. We're going to work to put a framework together that's that's appropriate and follow the guidance of the town attorney. And of course, Attorney DiPaolo is also well versed in the law as well, so we'll be following some of the guidance there and the things that we can do in the process that we need to take as well. In the meantime, my understanding is that current law does allow. I know maybe this doesn't apply to everybody, but in case there is somebody here who is not in one of the Sun homes, or if you're in a home that has an apartment with more than 5 units in the building, you can today appeal to the court system, the Connecticut court system, in lieu of a fair rent commission. So while we're getting set up, if you have a complaint today and you're in that situation and you're over 62 or disabled, you do have the ability to file that complaint today in Southington. And then the last item was, if you have a situation also that you wanted to share, or maybe if we have an aggregate situation that we wanted to pull together, we can also do that through the manager's office, the town manager's office. As we're setting up, it may be good to have some of the specific items detailed that we're seeing, like you're talking about today, that they can consider while we're putting together the framework. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think the answer to Val's question, I don't think, just speaking for myself, I have enough information about how they've worked in all the municipalities around the state of Connecticut in concept. They seem to be a good thing, but I'm not sure how, in practice, they've actually worked out.
I was just wanted to add to that real quick. Our Fair Rent Commission, Clinton, you're 100% right. If a complaint is filed, that's when they meet. That's number one. Number two, they went off of Title VII, 148, I believe it's. So, and like you said, it's a little bit, it needs more help as far as that goes. I just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you. We're kind of running out of time. Why don't we take one more comment?
Senator and Congressman, I thank you for coming today. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since we've had any help at all. And I love your pen. All right, folks, I don't know how to use microphones, so if you can't hear me, I'll try talking louder. I've been a resident of Evergreen Springs Park since 1974, which gives me 48 years in a park. I've been in 3 different homes, and when it was owned by the original owner, which was a family park, he was a real bastard, but he always took care of you. He was my next door neighbor. He'd stop every day and pet my dog. It's it was a homemade park and a homey feeling. My rent started at $38, and now I'm at $731. We formed our Fair Rent Commission when it was actually 700% increase down in Clinton. Nobody was there to help us, but we got some assistance from the town of Westbrook, and they had already formed one for a park in their company, in their town, that was owned by the same company, which is RHP out of Michigan. RHP doesn't care about you. As I said earlier, or Robert said earlier, they look at this as they're renting you something that's going to cost you the same as any normal stick house single family home that you're going to find in their town. I don't look at rents, but they're pretty high in Clinton. So consider that. You don't own the land, you've paid your mortgage off, and you're still paying now $730 a month. It's a bad situation, and we need these guys to help us do something about it. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. I'm going to ask John whether he has any concluding remarks.
I said that I know the senator's got to go, but I'll stay, because I know there's some concern about Social Security. I'd like to thank you all for
coming. Senator, thank you for coming. We really appreciate you coming out, and we will be following up with you.
As I mentioned earlier, I want to hear from you. My staff is here, Joe Rodriguez. I know Congressman Larson, John has his staff as well, but we're going to pursue, as I mentioned, legislation. We're going to come back, and I'm going to come back, and I'm sure John will as well, to hear from you and to report back to you. And I want to continue working on the Social Security issue as well. John has been the leader, but there are all kinds of other issues, and we may agree or disagree on some of them, but we ought to be together on this one. So thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate your
If I may, in response to our council people, a lot of the reasons that people haven't used fair rent commissions in the past is because rents have been going up, right? Rents have been going up a lot across the board. That's why there was a change at the state level and why you're now having to act on it. When you are looking for how to structure the Fair Rent Commission, I know that I gave you a copy of the Model Fair Rent Commission. I would encourage you to use that as a framework, talk to some other communities, but there is a skeleton that you can look to, and I'd be happy to meet with you again if anytime. I'm going to turn this over to Congressman Larson. Thank you again, Senator Blumenthal, and we'll see you next time. All right, I'm gonna let him just make a couple of quick remarks, and then we'll bring over some questions. Go ahead.
Well, thank you again, Dave. Thanks, everybody, for being here. This is what a democracy looks like. And it's heartening to see, as someone who grew up in a federal housing project called Mayberry Village in East Hartford, I'm long familiar with housing issues that people face. But when you get a turnout like this, and you have such articulate people who are putting their case forward, that deserves the government's attention. And to have all three levels of government, local officials, state officials, and federal officials, this is also what a democracy requires, as Senator Blumenthal said, that we're pulling together on behalf of people who need our help. A dear friend of mine said, sometimes I feel like I'm invisible, that nobody's hearing what I have to say, and that we're ignored because we're taken for granted. It's just a spot or a glitch on a map. That should never be the case in a democracy. And how do you change that? You change it with your voice. You change it by coming out to a meeting like this, not just to hear people talk, but to have them act. And it sounds like in Southington, they're in the process of putting together a fair rent commission. You have the commitment, Ms. Martinez as the state legislature, to work there. And clearly you have our commitment, and as I was listening to people speak, we had a number of renter issues as it related to COVID. And most notably, people being thrown out of their apartments because they couldn't meet the rent. Now that's not the same case here, but it's almost reverse. We have many landlords, believe it or not, coming to us and saying, hey, we're being hurt by this. Still not at all applicable in the case of parks.
We own our home.
You own the home. And the lack of maintenance and the ability to jack up a price like that, and again, as you so well articulated, base that as though, what you call it, a stick house?
Stick house, a regular wooden stick house that you built.
Yeah, so that's, and that has to change, because they are not the same. And so perhaps we can amend the federal statutes also, or provide greater flexibility for states to do so. And I know that Senator Blumenthal and I will discuss that further, but also, I know you're aware, because Dave has been a tireless advocate of this, of some of the initiatives, but it's great to talk about initiatives, but at the end of the day, what you want is action. And so, I think initially what we have to do is look at the existing funding that's out there and see how that might be applicable to the situation and how we might amend it. But I especially am concerned, being the chair of the Social Security Subcommittee on Ways and Means, about the lack of help for our most vulnerable citizens to inflation. Anybody who's on Social Security, as I look around this room, it'd be hard to guess that there's probably a few of you that aren't. But this is the nation's #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly. Probably will surprise people. It's also the #1 anti-poverty program for children. It also is a disability program that more veterans utilize than the VA. And to the embarrassment, or what I believe should be the embarrassment of Congress, it has not been expanded in 51 years. Now think about that. Richard Nixon was president of the United States, and a gallon of milk cost 72 cents. And throughout all that time, and so I find it incredibly ironic, if not moronic, that they wrote a letter where they actually said, oh yeah, geez, we just wish the federal government would keep pace. Well, yeah, but it hasn't. That doesn't give you the justification. But the federal government does have to keep pace. And Social Security hasn't been adjusted. Now, the last time it was adjusted in 1983, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House. Ronald Reagan was actually the president then. And Bob Dole, God rest his soul, who just recently passed away this past year, was in the Senate. And they did extend the solvency of the program into the future, but they did it by cutting benefits. You might say, well, how so? Well, for every year you raise the age, that's a 7% cut in benefits for people over a lifetime. 7%. We actually have people in Congress saying, yeah, what we need to do is just have people raise the age, which in essence cuts the benefits. He says, because people are living longer. I said, well, if people are living longer, how does it make sense to cut their benefits when they're going to need it the most? So we're waging a fight down there that starts with #1. This isn't anything, and God bless President Biden, because he's called Social Security a sacred trust and has come out strongly in saying that it has to be not only protected. We actually have people in Congress that are proposing that it ends in 5 years. We have people still proposing that it be privatized. You see how this privatization thing is going, and whether you're experiencing it as a renter or now there's bills in Congress to say, oh, look, you could make far better money, far greater return if you took your Social Security money and invested that in the private sector.
How about if we invest it through these companies that are raising our rents?
That's a good point. But here's the, you don't have to go back to the Great Depression to figure out what would happen if that was the case. You only have to go back to 2008, 2009 during the Great Recession, when people's 401k became a 101k, and they lost that money that you cannot make up. During that same time, Social Security never missed a payment. Not a pension payment, not a disability payment, not a spousal or dependent coverage. That's why it's the America's #1 insurance plan. The #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly and for children until the passage of the child tax credit, which would make it #2, but not by much. So that's how important this is. And you have people on the other side of the aisle saying that this is an entitlement program.
Yeah, we're entitled to it.
Exactly. You are entitled to it, but it's easily refuted when you say, really? Funny thing, when I look at my pay stub, it says FICA. What does that stand for? Federal Insurance Contribution. Whose? Yours. Let me repeat that again. Federal insurance. It's not a tax. It's an insurance premium. And the federal government, aka Congress, has not enhanced those benefits in 51 years. We have brochures that we'll pass out to you that will show what the act is and what we're proposing to do, but to give everybody an increase across the board in Social Security, because it hasn't been increased in over 51 years.
Medicare's waiting for
Put a
it.
cap on Medicare.
Well, Medicare does, well, this past year because the COLA, because of the pandemic, and this year the COLA should be high as well as, but I forget who articulated, because of the way Medicare works, it sucked up a lot of the Social Security increase. So, but Social Security needs to be not just, even the COLA itself. There have been many years where seniors got no COLA because of the way the formula is based. So we're changing the formula so that whether it's a pandemic, but most regularly, what happens is the very things that seniors spend their money on is where we should be gearing the COLA so that Social Security is always keeping pace with the cost of living. That is not the case today. And that's why we're seeking to reform that. To give people an across-the-board increase by 2%. Nobody's buying stock options for Social Security, I can tell you that. They use it to survive. And then making sure that we're adjusting the COLA, and then also making sure that no one can retire into poverty. I'm going to make a wild guess, though. I'll bet there's a few of you here in this audience that get a Social Security check that's below the current poverty level in the country. Most people who receive those checks are women. Why is that so? That's because they were the caregivers in their families. They were the ones who stayed home to take care of the children or whoever was sick. And when they were working, whether it was part-time or full-time, they weren't receiving the same kind of salary or benefit that their male counterparts were as well. So to live in the wealthiest nation in the world and to have worked all your life and contribute into a program, expecting in return that that insurance program that you paid into was going to be A, solvent, and B, keep pace with the way things are, that simply hasn't been. And for more than 5 million Americans, most women, they get below poverty level checks. In this new proposal, the new floor for Social Security will be 125% of what the poverty level is. So that nobody can work their whole life, pay into a system, and then get a below poverty level check from the government. That new level, if you're following this, will be 25% above whatever the federal government establishes as the poverty rate, which today is $12,500. So there are also people who work because you have to. Who did I hear saying I'm still working? Yeah, yes. Because you have to. And you're taxed on Social Security because of that. This bill eliminates the tax on Social Security. Not for all levels of income. If you're a couple and making over $100,000, etc., you would still pay some portion of tax. And an individual making over $50,000, you would make some portion. But for the vast majority of people, they would no longer be paying a tax if they have a part-time job or they're needing to make ends meet. I'll get to you. I just want to make a couple of final points. So we also extend benefits so that widowers get more money, because oftentimes in the exchange based on these old formulas, even if you get your husband's or the husband gets their wife's Social Security, it hasn't been fairly distributed. So we changed the formula there so that you will get more money. And again, we're not talking about money here that you're going to be able to take a trip to Europe on. We're talking about subsistence in basically being able to afford food and afford pharmaceuticals, which is the main goal and effort. We also are repealing what is called WEP and GPO. So if you're a former teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, or whatever, and a municipal employee that's operated under the windfall elimination provision, that is going to be repealed. Thank you, President Biden. And people and their spouses who would otherwise not be eligible for Social Security will now be able to receive it. And we strengthen the longevity and the solvency of the program well into the future, so that everybody knows that Social Security will be there for them. President Biden has called it a sacred trust. Indeed, that's what it is, the sacred trust between the American people and their government. And I will say this, even though it's Congress's negligence that there hasn't been an adjusted in 51 years, over that same span, Social Security has never missed a payment. Not a disability payment, not a spousal, not a dependent payment, or a pension plan. But it needs to be enhanced and strengthened, etc. And to all of your points, and it needs to happen now. Now. And so, as Dick said, that is my work and my focus in Congress. 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. This is not something that's going to go away. It's not something that you can wish away. You can't kick the can down the road again, as Congress has. And if Congress doesn't take action by 2034, there will be a 20% across the board cut to existing Social Security. That cannot happen and that will not stand. And you know why it won't stand? Because there are meetings like this that are taking place all across the country for the exact same reason. People looking at their Social Security check, looking at the cost of living, looking at how some unscrupulous people are gouging, you know, whether it's home heating oil, whether it's gasoline, whether it's pharmaceuticals, etc. A lot of that is going on. Again, that's government's responsibility as well to step up and make sure that that's not going to take place, and to also give people something they paid into their whole lives. This is not as an entitlement plan. This is not something that someone is giving you something for nothing. You have paid for this. You have earned it, and now the people responsible for the program have got to make the increases and put it into law. It is not that hard. It is not that difficult a thing to ask your elected representatives. It's not anything that a municipal leader can do or that a state legislator can do. Only Congress can do it. The president can't do it to executive order, and the Supreme Court isn't going to adjudicate it. Only Congress can do it. And I say this to everywhere I go, that people should be on the backs of every Congress. Now, I'm proud in this state that every member of Congress in both the House and Senate are signers of this bill. The President of the United States is out there pushing this as well. But we got to get it across the finish line. Otherwise, all it is more chatter, and people are still struggling to try to make ends meet. So let me throw it up with a question, Jeff. Sorry if I went on a little bit too long. Yes, ma'am.
And Senator Larson, you had mentioned that Congress wants to stop taxing our Social Security, okay? There are some states that people have Social Security and they're not taxed at all. Why is the state of Connecticut taxing us? We worked hard to pay for our Social Security, and yet we're being taxed on it. How long do we have to wait for Congress to move and not tax our Social Security?
Well, you're asking two questions.
Right.
One is at the state level, and that's up to the state to react to that.
Okay.
And Congress should have acted years ago
Correct.
on this. It hasn't.
Yes.
We have a bill that forces them to do so. So we're trying to push that bill across the finish line.
Well, how long have you been working on that bill?
How about, would you believe, for 10 years minimum?
Why is it taking so long?
The question is, why is it taking so long? Because you have forces out there who, A, don't believe in the program and believe that it should be privatized or cut altogether. And so, in a democracy, it has to go through both houses and signed by the president. Now, this is the first time since 2008 that we have a president, a Senate, and a House that are all of one party. And so that's why we're putting the emphasis on passing this. Now, in the Senate, they also have a rule called the cloture rule, which is unconstitutional, where they say you need 60 votes to pass a bill in order to bring it up instead of the required 50. And so that has been a stumbling block. But it's actually been closer to 12 years that I've been pushing this. Only 4 years have we been in the majority, and only 2 have we been in the majority when we have the presidency. And as you know from the papers, the vice president has to break a tie
Correct.
in the United States Senate and there's only a 4-vote margin in the House of Representatives. So that is what becomes the obstacle. And you have people who want to end Social Security as it is, people who want to privatize it, or other people who just think it should be cut across the board. And so that's where the fight is occurring. We're hopeful that we're still going to get it passed this year. And all we can do is continue to push to make that happen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You're very informed. Any other? Yes, sir.
Representative Larson, you just mentioned about the newspapers. As you know from reading the newspapers, I just want to point out something very important, and that is by your being here, by Senator Blumenthal being here, one of the things that is a byproduct of that is that the press takes notice of your taking notice of these kind of issues. And if there's something that a private sector organization understands in a capital society, that is that if enough people know that these kind of abuses are taking place via the pressure that the media puts on, then the public knows. I better think twice about taking a home in that kind of development, in which case that threatens the very foundation of what they want, which is the money. So thank you for being here, and hopefully the press is taking notice. Thanks.
Well, your point, that's why free press is so vitally important to a democracy. Fortunately today, as you witnessed, I'm sure, as I have, I just met with the executive director of the editorial board for the Hartford Courant. And the Hartford Courant is not the paper it used to be. There used to be 5 reporters in Washington, D.C. working for the Courant covering Congress. How many do you think are there now? 1. So, and they're working to change that, but they're starting to build the big. So again, there's so many things in a democracy that are fragile. And the way that people are communicating news today, when you talk to, I have a hard time, to be honest, using my cell phone. So I mean, let me say that I'm among the digitally impaired in terms of my ability to work on that. Fortunately, I have a lot of young staff and children who laugh at me and make fun of me because I can't do it. But it really galls me to know that the way a number of people are getting their information is on the internet. And they can make up anything that they want. And there's no way to challenge it, etc. And people think it's what? You ready for this one? You want to have something scared to beat Jesus out of you. There now is the science and the technology where they can take your face and your voice and turn it into you speaking. And the only reason I know this is because, it's going to sound crazy, but have you heard about the Oprah Winfrey gummy scam? Well, we get all kinds of questions, etc. But that was one that I got, months ago, and it said, "Hey, what are you going to do about this Oprah Winfrey scam?" I went, "What is the scam?" "Well, it's all over the internet. They're advertising that Oprah's out there saying you can lose weight if you chew these gummies." I said, well, can you? They go, "No, it's a scam." I said, "Well, Oprah ought to say something about this." They said, "Well, she's trying to, but it's all over the internet. They have all these different." I said, that's another good reason why I don't use the internet. But I mean, these are the times that we're living in. But look around this room. This is what a democracy is about. And you're coming out because what other recourse do you have? You're turning to your elected officials. And I commend the local officials, the state reps that are here, because, as Tip O'Neill would say, all politics is local. Everything starts at the grassroots. Everything here that matters is knowing that you've already made an impact on a local council that's looking into, not the panacea as Dave pointed out, but looking into how they can work on your behalf. And that's, again, what a democracy is about. You know that phrase, in order to form a more perfect union, the only way you get there is listening to your citizens and having them not get discouraged. And let's be honest, people get discouraged pretty easy. You know what I hear more often than not? Pox on both your houses. We're tired of listening to all the arguments going on in Washington, D.C. What we want is you to help us and work together to get that done. And I believe both, you know, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you truly want to work on behalf of the citizens that you represent. And it's those basic philosophies that are guiding you. One that maybe perhaps is that, well, more individualistic, as I'll go into my mimicking some of my colleagues from the South who say, I grow up, look out across my spread, I'm proud to be American. Stand shoulder to shoulder with people who are willing to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, that don't have to rely on government subsidies, and go out there and through the sweat of their brow, put their shoulder to the wheel, understand what individualism is about. I don't have to take a handout from anybody. I'm an independent. I make sure that I made it on my own. I could have sung Frank Sinatra's song, for crying out loud. That's what I'm telling you. And enough of these programs to help out the public. Why don't they just help out themselves? Well, that is a point of view. And I heard that more than once growing up in my household from my parents. Of course we all want to be individually responsible and take care of yourself and your family. But when, through no fault of your own, when a global pandemic strikes the world, when there's a downturn in the economy that has nothing to do with you, when bad decisions by your employer lead to a layoff, that was not your fault. Where do you turn in a democracy? We learned from Franklin Delano Roosevelt that is great, and we do have the greatest system in the world. It is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but there are remedies within that system, and that's why your being here is so important, and that's why Dave's work, frankly, is so important. You got more than a few people here who aren't too shy either, and very good about expressing opinions. And that's what America needs now more than anything else, is people speaking up and out. And if you don't, you say, oh, wait a minute, that's not my thing. You can sign a letter. You can make a call. But make sure that people know your concerns. Send an email. I'd have difficulty with that too. Yeah. Thanks. Well, listen, thank you. And I don't know if there are any more questions. I'm happy to take them. But yes.
Yeah, can you explain this to me like why does Connecticut tax?
I'm sorry. Could you? Wait, we can't hear you. Could you come?
Yeah, I just didn't understand the answer to why does Connecticut tax Social Security in other states?
Well, a lot of states.
That's a local government.
That's a state of Connecticut issue.
Right.
So.
And you're part of the state.
I'm the federal part of the state of Connecticut. I don't have a vote in the Connecticut State Senate or the Connecticut House of Representatives anymore. I used to.
That's right. So how do we get to Lamont? How do we get to Lamont? Because wouldn't you be the top echelon?
Yes, it would. It would be. this is a matter, and, this is a matter that the state legislature should take up. And, and again, to be brutally honest about it, I didn't, you're saying the state of Connecticut has through their state income tax, I assume, is because you're getting income from Social Security, they're taxing that. I don't know what the nexus is as to why they do that, but.
It's
money.
Yeah.
That's something maybe you wanna explore.
Right.
Being at the level, you wanna explore that.
Yes.
Okay, I'll see.
She's being very kind to me, saying, well, why don't you wake up and try to, smell the roses here and get something done. Thank you. I get that a lot at home too, so don't feel bad at all. Well, listen. Oh, did you have a question, sir?
No, just got a comment for it.
Okay. Well, listen, thank everybody for the opportunity to be here, and we do have, this is Gladys Mercado in the back of the room, and Charles, and she's they do a great job working with constituents. She will be working directly with Dave on the issues that we spoke about today and how we can coordinate together. To the lady's point, because even though we don't vote in the Connecticut legislature, we can speak and to them and say, this is a concern that we heard that ought to be
It's called
addressed.
fatherly influence.
Fatherly.
Fatherly.
And motherly too, we have a lot of, but thank you.
Okay, before everybody leaves, just a little more information for you. On the state legislature, you got Senator Maroney and Representative Smith. They sponsored bills this year that got passed. And as far as what a lot of you were here for, the Fair Rent Commission, they had a Fair Rent Commission session as far as a legislator goes. They enacted a law that requires all municipalities with a population of 25,000 or more to adopt ordinance creation for a rent commission. So if they're doing that for 25,000 or more for the larger cities, now let's say it's your turn. Get in touch with these representatives, because these two are the ones that spearheaded the act to get it passed in the legislation for Connecticut. So if you can get in touch with these representatives and tell them you want this done for your lesser population communities, maybe you'll turn into law for everybody.
So how do we get all this information?
Senator Maroney and Representative Smith, all you gotta do is Google them, send them a note, telling them you want this legislation passed for a smaller population. If they can do it for larger cities, they can do it for smaller cities.
CT.gov. That's listen, CT. And you'll find a list of all your senators and representatives for your.
And I work for the Alliance just like Dave does. I'm the VP, he's the president, so,
I'm past president.
All right, everybody, thank you for coming down. For those of you who are still here, if you're trying to figure out how to influence your government to not tax your Social Security, you do the same thing that we've done here. You contact them, you contact your town councilmen, you contact your state representatives. If you don't have a computer, go to the library and look up who they are and contact them. Both Senator Blumenthal and Congressman Larson said the same thing. Seeing a room full of people does more than anything else. Do it. Thank you all for coming. See you next time.